Well, thank you, Donna, and thank you, Anthea. That was so beautiful. It's almost hard to talk after that meditation. And so we go into what the Buddhists call a state of non-dual awareness. And the trick is to be not totally in it, but to be aware of it, but to still also be aware of duality, you know. So Donna asked me to talk about Violet Tara this morning, if I recollect.
Correct.
And Violet, the concept of Tara comes from the Buddhist teachings, and that they have 21 Taras. Well, now there's 22, thanks to Violet Tara. But you have to understand what the Buddhists call a yidam, which would be, it's a tantric practice. Now, Tantra has a bad name in the West because they only talk about one aspect of it, but the word Tantra means unbroken awareness. It means like a web where everything is interconnected. So knowing that in the consciousness of the oneness of the presence, we're all part of the great fabric of existence, you know. And it really relates to quantum physics also, in the sense that there is no separation, that what you do to a carbon atom on Earth is affecting a carbon atom, you know, 100 light years away. And you can't really understand that with the human consciousness. You just have to know that in that state of oneness, we are all connected. And as Einstein said, I paraphrase him really, there's no such thing as a solid object, really. Everything is vibration and energy and consciousness. And that's how some of these beings walk through walls, or they can be in two places at once, because they're in that consciousness of the oneness. So if you're in that consciousness, you can evoke whatever quality you want. And these yidams, or deities that they have in India, many of them they're not people that were ever born on Earth and grew up and then ascended. They are aspects of consciousness. So there may be various human beings who have embodied those qualities. Like they will say a certain woman is the embodiment of white Tara. Or I'm sure many of you have met or even identify with Mother Mary, especially the women that you grow up. She's an example of the Divine Mother quality. And the more that you think about her, the more you draw her into your life, you know, and the more you become her. And then you have a lot of people feel so close to Mary that they start channeling messages. Well, they may not actually be from the Mother Mary, but they're from that Mother Mary consciousness. And depending on the purity of the individual, you can get a very inspiring message. And I know I've experienced various women who have felt like really embodiments of that pure divine love. And it's the same with the Taras, which is more an Indian concept, that they embody various aspects of the Divine Mother. And some of them are wrathful, like sometimes the mother needs to shout at the child, get out of the street, that there's not time to be polite and say, dear one, would you please come here? You say, get out of the street, you know. So that's also love, you know, it's the love for the child, wanting to protect the child. So if there's any particular quality you want, you can think of that in the form of a goddess or a god. And many people have a hard time visualizing the I am presence, imagining that it's there. But you could maybe more easily visualize a particular being like Saint Germain or Jesus or Mother Mary, because we grow up seeing pictures of those beings. So they're already there in our consciousness. So Violet Tara came about in a very unusual way. Saint Germain appeared to me while I was at a friend's house. I think if he'd come to me in meditation, I would have thought, what on earth am I thinking about? That's a strange idea. But the fact that he came while I was talking to a friend who just told me he was going out to play golf that afternoon, and he was seeing me to the door, and suddenly behind him, over his right shoulder, I saw Saint Germain. Now, not in a physical body, in the etheric body, but it was very clear. There's that shimmering violet light, and he had a big smile on his face. He seems to have a great sense of humor, where he enjoys doing things that he knows is going to like freak us out a little bit, He was the last person I was expecting to see. We hadn't been having a spiritual conversation at all, be talking about town politics and things like that, and the weather. And suddenly, just as we're going to the door, there's Saint Germain standing behind him. And he said, "Peter, I want you to write about Violet Tara." Now, I had never heard that term before. Of course, I work with the violet fire, the violet flame every day. But I knew immediately what he meant. I knew who the Taras were. I've studied Tibetan Buddhism. And so there was, in that 1 second that he said that, there was a mind-to-mind transmission of the book he wanted me to write. Now, he didn't dictate the words. That was up to me. And that was hard work, because I was aware that once I start talking about Tara and Yidams and things like that, all the great Buddhist teachers are going to be looking over my shoulder, and I better get it right, In fact, the first rough draft, I had some of the Buddhist teachings, like I had the Four Noble Truths. Well, when I looked at the proof copy, I'd only listed 3 of them. And I said, this is not going to work. Not only the Buddhists, everybody else is going to say, "Peter, where were you? Were you dreaming while you were writing?" So the actual writing of the book, even though it was quite a short book, it took quite some time to, dot the I's and cross the T's as far as the Buddhist terminology went. But the essence of it is to think of this goddess who is composed of violet light, violet fire. And if it helps, Saint Germain said, think of her as his twin ray. Regardless of who his twin ray actually is, she can manifest in many ways, just like each of us can manifest many different aspects, and these ascended and cosmic beings can manifest many different qualities. So it helps me to think of Violet Tara as an aspect of Saint Germain. But what he's trying to get people to do is to realize you have the power to invoke violet fire, that Violet Tara is an aspect of yourself. You don't need to call on Saint Germain all the time when you want to call in violet fire. I mean, I used to feel a little bad, like he is so busy that if I want to send violet fire, through the town of Mount Shasta or through a restaurant where I'm sitting, he's busy doing work with world leaders and trying to, stop war and all these things, that I'm going to call him into my life to take care of some little situation, So I think that's the beauty of the I am teachings. I am the presence of Saint Germain. I am the presence of Violet Tara. I am a living Christ, and to realize that when you say I am, you invoke whatever quality follows that. And this Ram Dass, this spiritual teacher who I knew in the Himalayas, we used to hang out with his guru, Nimkro Baba. He confided that he had a brother that was in a mental institution. And he went to visit the brother because the brother thought that he was Jesus. And so they committed him. And the brother said to Ram Dass, I don't understand why I say that I'm Christ and they lock me up, and you say you're Christ and they worship you. And Ram Dass said, I don't say I am the Christ, I say I am a Christ. You say you are the Christ, and there's a big difference in that, So like a lot of the people I know, even, that I know personally, feel that they are Mother Mary. In fact, one summer I had 3 women tell me that, confidentially, well, they didn't say Mother Mary, they said Mary Magdalene. That was just in one summer. And that was, 30 years ago. There are many, many more. In fact, there's people walking around claiming to be Saint Germain and all kinds of cosmic beings, ambassadors from the 10th dimension and all sorts of things. And these are all qualities that we can tune into. And, with great benefit. The trick is not to the ego get hold of it and say, I am the one and only. Pearl told the story about the I Am pageant that the Saint Germain Foundation puts on every summer. There's the scene when Jesus is in the tomb and Archangel Michael gives the command to roll back the stone so that Jesus can come out. And he, waves his hand and says, roll back the stone. Well, at that point, the actor felt Archangel Michael come through him. And, then they rolled back the stone so Jesus could come out. But that affected him so deeply that he thought he was Archangel Michael. He said, wow, I finally realized who I am, And so people convinced him to go to see Pearl. And she said, well, that's a very beautiful story, but you felt his presence come through you, but that's not who you are. And you can invoke him at any time, And so these things are very, very tricky, and so that's where, meditation comes in, very important to go in when you start doing these affirmations, to realize it's the presence doing the affirmation through you, and so. And I noticed I really got into Buddhism after Pearl ascended, because she was the teacher I saw every day. And then I was really guided to study Tibetan Buddhism. And of course, the Buddhists say the self is an illusion. Well, it is in a sense, what they mean is the personality, the ego self is an illusion. But I noticed in these long texts that you do, they have these practices called the Drubchen. It's a 9-day practice, like it's a ritual practice, and meditation is part of it. Doing affirmations is a part of it. They don't call them affirmations, they call them mantras. And you might do a mantra for half an hour, 45 minutes. But I noticed, the first line of it is go into a state of non-dual awareness. So you're not doing it with your normal human consciousness. Now, to enter a state of non-dual, this is written by lamas for lamas. They've already done a 3-year meditation retreat, People ask me how to meditate, and I give them the basic, observe your breath and observe your mind and things like that. And they say, how long do I need to do this? And I said, well, a good beginning would be 3 years, And they go, 3 years? I'll do it for 3 minutes, you know? But that's the West. We want everything instantaneously, like push a button and it happens, you know? So, but anyway, that's I mean, maybe some people are being born these days that have already achieved that in a past life, and they can just go into it like that. But anyway, that's part of the practice, is to go into a state of oneness where obviously you can't go totally into the oneness, or you wouldn't be doing anything. You'd just be merged in a state of bliss, not even being aware of yourself as an individual. So you go partially into that, like the practice where Anthea just led us, feeling gratitude. You have to feel gratitude for something. If there were nothing, you would just, be gratitude, but not even aware of it, So anyway, you enter this state of partial non-dual awareness, and imagine a goddess in front of you of violet light, and knowing that that violet quality has the power to dissolve negativity and to transmute things negative into positive. It's not the quality of destruction, it's transmutation and elevation, elevating things. And one of the doors to that is forgiveness, to let go of the feeling that someone has harmed you, or that there are people in the world against you, and things, to forgive those people. And to really let go of that, but to realize you can be an instrument for elevating that condition. And this is really the door to freedom. Pearl told me at one time, Saint Germain considered using the name freedom as his name instead of Saint Germain, because that's kind of what the violet ray represents. It's the boundary between the human condition and the unlimited ascended master consciousness. And you enter into that through forgiving your parents, whatever they did, your grandparents, your friends, your partner, whatever it is that you feel has been done to you, forgiving them, and also asking for forgiveness for yourself, So that quality of forgiveness is really the open door to freedom. And after I had written this book, I Am Violet Tara, there was still a part of me kind of doubting it a bit, even after I'd written the book on it. So I decided to do some experiments with it. And this was at the beginning of COVID, and Trump was in the White House then. And this is not a political statement at all. I call on violet fire for whoever's in the White House and who's ever in all the governments around the world. It's not a political statement, but it's a way to be of service to help transmute negativity. So I did this visualization. I closed my eyes and I imagined above my head that I Am Presence became Violet Tara, this goddess of violet light, all shimmering and sending out beautiful waves of violet light. And then I went above the White House, and that happened just like that, that I am above the White House, and I'm sending a tube of violet fire down around Donald Trump. And I am sending it down so powerfully that he sees it. And I did that for maybe a minute or two. And then I let it go. And later in the day, the president had a press conference, and they asked him, what he was doing about the pandemic. And he said, I think we should investigate violet light as a means of curing COVID. And the press went absolutely nuts. They said, the president is out of his mind. What's he talking about, violet light and all that stuff? But they didn't report everything he said. what he said after violet light was, this should be studied by scientists and investigated and tested by the medical profession. You know, that the press, it was only much later that I found out the whole recording of what he said, but they wanted to make it seem like he was out of his mind, you know. But that was a great blessing to me, that it showed me that my visualization, that he was actually receiving that, you know. So that gave me the courage to go ahead and share it with other people, and also to use it every day. I go into that violet Tara consciousness and go wherever in the world help is needed, and send that violet light down, you know. And I could do it without violet Tara, just I am the present sending violet fire down, but visualizing violet Tara gives you a focus. It's easier when you have an image of something, you know, and also the words, doing an I am affirmation, that also creates the focus, you know. So, and then you can also, another aspect that they have in Buddhism, they talk about mantra and mudra and visualization. Mudra is a hand gesture. So, you know, while you're visualizing yourself as violet Tara, I am sending violet fire down, or I am blazing the violet flame up in and through that condition. You know, you probably don't want to do that standing in the middle of downtown, but you can do it at home, you know, when nobody's watching. I understand some of the IM students used to go through downtown San Francisco. There's a part called the Tenderloin. It was a pretty rough area where the bars are and stuff like that. And these, you know, they say the little old ladies would stand outside a bar going like with a sort of blue flame, you know, going like this, and people would wonder what they were doing, what they were calling for Archangel Michael and the sort of blue flame to go through. But so, you know, probably better to do that when people aren't watching somewhere. But the practice is really quite simple. Again, you go within and feel your own oneness, and then you can visualize either violet Tara above you or in front of you. And I love you, violet Tara. I ask you to merge with me. And I am, you know, I am now violet Tara. And I am going forth wherever needed. I am going forth to the Congress of the United States, blazing the violet consuming flame up in and through the Congress, through every member of Congress, dissolving and consuming all imperfection, all human negativity, and raising all Congress people into the consciousness of their I am presence forever, bringing about the divine plan for America. So be it, and it is done. I thank you. I am grateful to Violet Tara. Wow. To see that violet light fully self-sustained, like an amethyst enfolding the Congress, and that violet light is continuing to blaze through there. That is the power of attention. Then, when you come back from that, you thank Violet Tara and you allow her to separate from you. And then you can ask her if you want, you can say, beloved Tara, I am going to be very busy today and I don't have time to think of you at every moment, you know, especially while I'm driving or doing my taxes or whatever. Please stay above my head and blaze the violet fire forth wherever I am, whatever situation requires it. I am requesting you to continue your service to humanity, even if I'm not thinking about you. And then you thank her and let her go and let her do her work, you know. And you can do this with any of your invocations of the Ascended Masters. Even if I forget to call on you throughout the day, please be there above me, protecting me and blessing everyone I encounter. And then at the end, you come back into the awareness of yourself. And realize you are in a world of form and substance, and you have to play that role in the movie that we call three-dimensional life on Earth, you know? That's kind of a short summary of the Violet Tara practice, you know. And happy to answer any questions, or observations, or anything.
Yes, I'm really moved by that, and I'm very interested, because every day I hold Julian Assange.
Ah, yes.
In the light, and I would be really grateful if you could give us something like that, a formula for his release. Because I just think it's terrible what's...
Yeah. Yeah, the question was about how to help Julian Assange, who basically was a journalist who received information the same way that the newspapers receive it. They have private sources. And he published it, and he exposed some rather shocking things going on in the government. And they had him arrested, and he's been in prison for what?
About 20 years.
20 years now. So what we can do is, again, I am Violet Tara, blazing up and around and through Julian Assange and through the prison where he's held, dissolving and consuming all negativity, and raising Julian into the consciousness of his own I am presence, dissolving all conditions that hold him there unjustly. I am divine freedom, come forth for Julian Assange. I am divine freedom, come forth for Julian Assange. I am divine freedom, come forth for Julian Assange. Now see, I am not saying that as a decree with my human will. We don't know his karma. We don't know what his agreements are. We don't know all the ins and outs of the political situation. But I'm saying I am divine. Now, divine freedom is not human freedom. Human freedom is, open that door now and let him out. Divine freedom is he may have agreed to go through this for some service that he's doing. I mean, it could not be totally against divine will, or he would not be there. So there is some great lesson come forth through this, but it definitely helps for us to call for the fire of forgiveness. And the other thing, I am the open door, which no man can shut. I am opening the door to freedom for Julian Assange. May he be freed in perfect divine order. I mean, perhaps we'll achieve the ascension there. What if they go to bring him his lunch one day and he just turns into a being of rainbow light and goes poof? That'll show them, Then he can appear as an ascended master. But I agree with you. I feel such compassion for him that many days I do that work for him. And I also have asked Saint Germain a number of times, please help Julian Assange bring about the divine plan for him.
For great awakening.
Yeah.
What's actually been happening, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, if you, believe what's in the Bible, that Jesus knew he was going to be crucified, that he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he said, "Please, may this cup pass from me, but if it's your will, I will accept it," and that he knew that, and he did it for the benefit of others. So it's possible Julian Assange, as a Christ being, has agreed to do the same in some way,
Okay, well, thank you so very much. Did you have anything else to tell us?
So I was just going to say, don't underestimate the power of the violet light, though.
Absolutely.
That it works. Even like you wearing a violet shirt, I'm wearing light violet or whatever, and even having violet around, or even I have it's just made of glass. It looks like a huge amethyst. It's cut like a gem, and I got it for $10 in town. But sitting there, it holds my awareness. It's out of the corner of my eye all day long. I'm seeing that violet rock there. And that invokes, even it's not an amethyst, it invokes the violet fire, because through my attention, Yes.
Does it have to be the Tara that you invoke?
Tara, well, you can call her anything you want, And if you have another name for her, but the point is that it's violet, a being, a goddess of violet light, or it could be a god of violet light. It's just a name to call her. By the way, one day I attended a bhajan group, a Sai Baba bhajan group, and I was wondering how Sai Baba viewed all of this kind of ascended master stuff, and what he thought of the violet flame. And out of the picture of Sai Baba, I saw this rush of violet light come out into the room, and he said, "I use the violet fire too." And then there was, a long time ago, I knew this woman in New York by the name of Hilda Charlton.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
Yeah, and she had a group. At first it met downtown, just a small group, maybe 20, 30 people. Eventually the group got bigger and she moved uptown to Cathedral of St. John the Divine. But she was a focal point for many of the people interested in Eastern spirituality. She'd spent a lot of time in India, and she had spent time with Sai Baba also. And one day she was in Baba's house, and there were half a dozen other people there, and he was going from person to person, talking to them. And she was thinking, maybe I shouldn't think so much about the masters. Maybe I should put all my attention on Sai Baba. And Sai Baba turned around, without her saying anything. She was just thinking that. Sai Baba turned around and said, "Oh, Hilda, the masters, he just went, "Oh, the masters," And so that was confirmation that it doesn't have to be either or. You can accept all divine beings, And it was Sai Baba who told me, meditate on I am, Yes.
So where would you place, or for lack of better words, the incarnation of the Sai avatar in the whole bigger whole? There's this divine director, and there's all these.
Yeah, I've given up trying to put them in a certain relation order like that. When I was wandering around in the Himalayas, I had a book from the Theosophical Society. It wasn't Isis Unveiled, which is a big thick book. It was a kind of summary of that, and it had a chart in there that would fold out. These 2 pages would fold out, and it was like a schematic diagram of reality according to Theosophy. The different rays and the monad and everything from Theosophy, all the complicated concepts, all in this diagram. And I was looking at it one day, trying to figure it all out, how it all worked together. And there was this yogi that I'd been staying with, his guru was Babaji. And this guy I was staying with, I never saw him eat, and I saw a photograph of him 40 years after I was with him, and he didn't look like he aged a day, But anyway, he saw me looking at this theosophical book, and he said, "You're never going to find God in that chart." So I closed it up, So, there's a difference between studying spiritual teachings and actually being it, and applying it, which was at some point I realized that's what I wanted to do. I was a guest of the Theosophical Society in India at Adyar, and it was probably the largest metaphysical library in the world there. It's absolutely huge. When I walked in there, I felt I've got to read every book in here. I want to know. It probably take me a couple of years, probably 20 years, but then at some point, well, actually, that's where I first saw Unveiled Mysteries, but I wasn't ready for it yet because being in India, I was in a kind of renunciation thing, and they started talking about jewels, and gold and all that stuff. And I said, this is too materialistic for me. Of course, if I'd kept reading, I would have got to the good stuff, but it wasn't till later when I came back to the States, I was staying in a friend's house in Santa Fe, and he mentioned Unveiled Mysteries, and I got it out of the library. And before I opened it, I said, Saint Germain, please show me if what's written in here is true. And I opened that book, and suddenly the room filled with violet light. And it was probably the most intense violet fire I have ever seen. It was just like a spotlight came on, and the whole room was violet. And that was my answer to keep reading, and I just sat there for 2 days in that chair and read Unveiled Mysteries cover to cover, So then when I got to Mount Shasta, and Pearl said, have you read Unveiled Mysteries? And I said, oh no, not again. That book keeps haunting me, and of course now it's sitting on my desk, I look at it every day. Any other? Sorry, I didn't really answer your question, but I just send love to all of them, and I go for a walk in the park here, Hoy Park. At one end of the park, there's 7 trees, and I think of them as the ascended masters of the 7 rays. And if I got something to say to one, I'll go to that tree, and I'll just stand there having a conversation. People wonder, what's that guy doing? I try not to talk out loud. I talk mentally, to the tree. And then there's a big one at the end, and I call that one the Maha Chohan. And then there's Sanat Kumara, is that tree over there. And it's just a way to kind of bring it into my 3D world, you know what I mean? Right. But yeah, so we all find our own particular way of applying the teachings, and it's not like one way is right and the other way is wrong. Important thing is the sincerity, even saying God bless you or God bless that person, that's doing great good if it comes from your heart.
Okay,
Well,
thank
that's
you
it.
so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.